Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Vessalatu vesselamu ala Resulina Muhammedin sallallahu aleyhi ve sellem. Meded ya Resulullah ya saadet ashabı Resulullah ya şahine. Destur ve la şerefler fazlasın Muhammed'e medet. Tarikatına sahbu ve hayr fil cemiyye. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Amelu feseyarallahu amelekum. Allah Azze ve Celle buyuruyor. Yapacağınız şeyleri, dünyada yaptığınız her şeyi Allah Azze ve Celle'nin önüne görüyor da gene görecek. Yaptığınız şeyler hep görülecek Allah Azze ve Celle'nin huzurunda.
Allah Almighty says, whatever you do and whatever you have done in this world, know that Allah Almighty sees it and Allah Almighty will bring it before you again.
İyilik yaptınız mı? İyiliği Allah Azze ve Celle görür.
Everything you have done will be seen in the presence of Allah Almighty. If you have done good, Allah Almighty sees that goodness and will give you reward accordingly.
Ona göre mükafat verir. Kötülük yaparsa onun da muhakkak onda cezası var. Tövbe etmezse.
And if one does evil, there is certainly a punishment for it, unless one repents.
Bu dünya meşgaleleri, dünya oyun eğlence diyor Allah Azze ve Celle.
Allah Almighty describes these worldly occupations as merely play and amusement.
Onu Allah yolunda olarak bu yapılan şeyler Allah yolunda olsun.
Therefore, let the things you do be for the sake of Allah Almighty.
Lüzumsuz şeylere o kadar ehemmiyet vermek gerekmez.
It is not necessary to give so much importance to unnecessary things.
Verilen emekler, sarf edilen paralar, bunlar lüzumsuz şeylere giderse hiçbir faydası yoktur.
If the efforts made and money spent go towards unnecessary things, then there is no benefit.
Kendine de faydası yoktur.
And you must know that even though you might do those things in order to enjoy yourself, in the end you must know that there is no benefit for yourself in those unnecessary things.
Bazı çok kötü şeyler olabilir peşine gittikleri. Bazıları da yani fazla bir kötü olmasa da vaktini kaybetmek, emeğini harcamak boşuna oluyor.
Sometimes people pursue things that are very bad, and sometimes people do things which may not be very bad, but still, in the end, those unnecessary things will result in a waste of time and in an effort for nothing.
Evet, 2 gün önce gelirken havaalanında baktık bir kalabalık.
2 days ago, when we returned, we saw a crowd, a huge crowd at the airport.
Sonra dediler işte bir çocuk top oynar galiba. Onu millet onu karşılamaya geliyor.
People were coming with great enthusiasm to welcome a young man who plays football.
Ama ne iştahına geliyorlar.
That enthusiasm with which they came to welcome that football player is something beyond description.
Yani kimse o kadar iştahla ibadet yapamaz.
No one worships with that much enthusiasm.
Onların o koşturdukları, o iştahla koşturdukları insanların
people came running with such enthusiasm for the sake of welcoming a football player, and that enthusiasm and joy and dedication they demonstrated is not to be found in anyone who comes for worship.
Yani tabii insan hacca gider, dinlemeye gelirse insan alimleri filan. Ama öyle o kadar iştahını hiç görmedim.
Of course, people go to Hajj and they come to listen to scholars, but I have never seen anyone that enthusiastic.
Dünya için, lüzumsuz bir şey için o kadar koşturmak, onun %1'ini bizde olsa,
People run around for matters and for the sake of this world. They run after unnecessary things.
hepsi evliya olur, hepsi havada uçar.
And people pursue those worldly things and worldly affairs and generally unnecessary things with such an enthusiasm and joy and dedication that even if we had just 1% of that enthusiasm for the sake of Allah Almighty, everyone would become saints and fly in the air.
Yani öyle subhanallah, yani onun verilen şeytan öyle gaz veriyor insanlara ki,
And this is an example of Shaitan inciting people to an enthusiasm for the sake of this world.
yani bir şey düşünsen, nedir bu? Sen bir şey kazandığın yok, kaybettiğin, kaybeden olur da en azından vaktini kaybedersin, emeğini kaybedersin.
And if you think about it, if you think about those things which people pursue with such great enthusiasm, joy, and dedication, in the end, in reality, they will gain nothing out of it. And they will have lost time and effort.
Allah yoluna olsa o kadar olmaz. Onun için
If it were for the path of Allah Almighty, then it would not have been a waste.
dikkat etmek lazım.
Therefore, one must be careful.
Bu şeyin karşısına oturup milletle konuşacak, makinenin karşılarındakine ne konuşurlar saatlerce anlamam.
And another example, you see people sitting in front of those machines talking to people for hours and hours. And I don't understand what they are talking about and what there is to talk about for such an extended time.
Vakit sabaha kadar uyumazlar.
They do not sleep until the morning.
Yani bu insanların düşünmesi lazım. Bunları yaptıklarımızı Allah Azze ve Celle görüyor.
People need to reflect on the fact that Allah Almighty sees what we are doing.
Bunların hesabını soracak.
And Allah Almighty is going to ask for an account of these things.
Zaten sonra pişman olur insan ki ben bu kadar vakti boşuna harcamışım. Allah da.
We must be careful in order to not end up regretting wasting so much time for nothing.
Desem bu hepsi kar kalacaktı.
People will regret in the end and say, if I'd remembered Allah Almighty, it would not all have remained. It would all have remained as a profit. If I had only remembered Allah Almighty, then my time and effort would not have been wasted, but it would remain for me as a profit in the hereafter.
Öteki türlü hiç ne kar var, zarardan başka şey yok.
If you don't do and act for the sake of Allah Almighty, then there is no profit in the things you do, and there is in the end nothing but loss.
Şimdi dikkat etmek lazım. Allah rızası olsun.
Therefore, be careful. Let those things you do be for the pleasure and the sake of Allah Almighty.
Allah'ın istediği olsun. Allah'ı unutmayın en azından.
And the least we should be doing is that we should not forget Allah Almighty at any moment.
Nereye gidersen gitsin, oraya da gitse insan Allah'ı unutmasın.
Wherever a person goes, and even if it is going to welcoming a football player, still, at least do not forget Allah Almighty.
Allah affetsin bizi desin.
And if you do such things, then again, do not forget Allah Almighty and ask Allah Almighty for forgiveness and say, may Allah Almighty forgive me for doing what I do.
Bu halimizden memnun değiliz. Halimiz iyi olsun diye Allah'a yalvarsın inşallah.
One should beg Allah Almighty that when you find yourself doing such unnecessary things, one should beg Allah Almighty and supplicate, admitting that you are not pleased with your own state, and we should ask for our state to be improved, and we should ask for Allah Almighty's support to change us, to improve us.
Allah hepimize boş işlerden uğraştırmasın.
May Allah Almighty not let us be occupied with empty works.
Bize yarayacak işler olsun.
May our works be those that will be useful to us.
Allah yardım etsin.
May Allah Almighty support us and help us in that.
Millet zevk-i safadan başka şey düşündüğü yok artık bu aralar.
These days people think of nothing but pleasure and amusement.
Allah ıslah eylesin hepimizi.
May Allah Almighty reform us all.
Amin Allah tevfik. El Fatiha.